Hello and welcome. I would like to demonstrate to you how to use the business rule engine step with Pentaho PDI. The advantage of using a rule engine is that you can separate your logic or your rules from the rest of the code or your transformation. And so if the logic or the rules change, you don't have to touch your transformation. I prepared a sample transformation here. I have a CSV input file with some data about airports, like country and name, latitude, longitude, position, and the altitude of the airport. Then I have the rule engine step, which I wrote. Then once the rule engine ran, I want to filter the rows into those that passed and into those that failed the rules. Here we have an additional step which we can optionally connect to the rule engine step, and it gives me the detailed results of the rules of what went wrong or which rules did pass the tests. Okay. So let's connect the steps together. So we have a flow of data. And this is really all that you have to do in Pentaho PDI to get going. The rule engine step needs a couple of configurations. One is a rules file name. I will show you in a minute how to create one of those. And then you need to define where the main output of the step goes. In this case, to the filter row step. Where the detailed results go. In this case, the dummy step. And you should select what type of data is output to this detailed step. So you could select to pass only failed rules or passed rules. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Let's select for the moment to only output failed rows. Okay, so the only thing that is missing here really is the rules file name. As the logic is not anymore in the Pentaho PDI transformation itself, we will have to create it externally. And therefore, we have a web application which allows you to create the rules. Let's log in. Okay. The main point here is that you have a link to the projects. Okay, it's empty. And let's create a new project. Okay, we give it a name. Okay, we give it a name in the description and click on Save. Okay, so now we have a project here. A project is really a container for all your rules, and later on you will use this project in the form of a zip file, and it will be referenced from the rule engine step. Okay, let's go a little bit further into the project. Okay, a project can have one too many rule groups. Let's create a new group. Okay. I've given it a name and a description and a valid from and a valid until date. Later on you will see that if you generate a file containing all the rules, only those rules will be considered which are valid for a given date. Okay, let's save it. Okay, so you have a project and a rule group. A project and a rule group. Inside the group you have subgroups, and subgroups now they combine all rules together in a subgroup. Okay, now let's create our first rule. Wait, let me show you a set of example data here so that you know what our data looks like. Okay, so we have an ID in each row, the name of the airport, the city where the airport is, the country. The airport has a so-called IATA code, which is a 3-letter code. Then there's also an ICAO code, that's a 4-letter code. And then we have latitude, longitude, and the altitude of the airport. Okay. Now let's create a rule which checks that the altitude is not lower or higher than a selected value. Okay, let's create a rule inside the subgroup. We name it and give it a description. Then we specify the field and we select what type of data. Next, you have a list of so-called checks where you can select from, and let's say we want to check if the value is greater or equal. Now you could check this against another field if you wanted, but in this case we want to check the altitude against the fixed value, and we say we want to check that the altitude field is greater or equal to 0. And now we have to specify a message for the condition that the rule passes and a message for the condition that the rule failed. Okay. Later on, when you run the rule engine, the detailed results go into this dummy step we defined here. And there you will find, depending on if it failed or passed, your message there. So a message is important because it will tell you what happened wrong with your checked data. And if you have many rules, then you better write good messages so that you understand correctly what went wrong. Okay, let's save it and go back. Now you can see we have a project with a rule group, a subgroup. Inside the subgroups, you can see here all rules are connected by an AND condition. Now we could change that, but I will explain that later. Let's create another rule, and because it's similar to this one, we just simply copy it. And we give it a new name. But now in this case, we check that it is smaller or equal to the maximum that we define. And we correct this to smaller. Okay, that's really all. Okay, now we have a set of 2 rules, and they belong to the project airport quality checks 01. And one is checking if the field altitude is greater or equal than 0, and the other one is checking if the altitude field is smaller or equal than 12,000. Okay. Once you've done that, we can create a file. We click on Generate File here. We select the project. There's only one at the moment. And we can specify a validity date. So if you have the case that a certain rule group is only valid for a certain time frame, and after that you have a similar group, but it's different for it's valid for a different time frame, then you can, so to say, plan ahead your rules, and they will automatically be valid from a certain date on. Let's generate the file now. We click on Generate. We select the folder, and it will create a zip file that is, let me copy this here, that is equal to the project name, and we save it. Okay, if we go to the file system, you can see that I saved it to the folder quality checks here. Okay, now the remaining step is to tell the rule engine step that it has to use this zip file. So that's the folder and the name of the zip file. The output, the main output, will go to the filter row step, and the detailed results will go to the dummy step. Okay, we save it, and now we're ready to run it. Well, actually, let's see in the preview what arrives here at the dummy step, where all the failed rows arrive. Okay, so this is a dummy step for the failed rows, and we have found 27 rows which do not conform to the rules that we have applied. Let's see. Okay, so we have Amsterdam Schiphol. Its altitude is -11. So the two rules that we defined, one of them was the airport has to have an altitude greater than 0. That is not true in this case. So the rule engine behind it detected that and output it here. As you can see, the rule engine step creates these 5 fields, which tell you how many groups you have, how many of those groups failed, how many rules you have all in all, and how many of the rules failed. The last one here is the actions. You can see it's 0 at the moment. We have not defined any actions yet. So you can see these 27 airports did not conform to our rules. On the other hand, you could look at the other rows and see which rows passed. But if you want to see the detailed results, then you would go here to the detailed results tab, and it will show you for each rule that you have, we at the moment have 2, will show you what happened with your row. Let's try it. Okay. Let's look again at Schiphol, Amsterdam. We know already that the rule failed, and here you can see in the output that the field altitude, it's -11 for this row, is not greater than 0, and it has a reference to your group, subgroup, and rule. So if you have many groups and many subgroups and many rules, so that you know exactly where the error happened. Okay, same is valid for the other airports. Let's go back to the project. Now, a project can have many rule groups, and those rule groups like collect those rules that belong together, that make a unit. So you can have multiple rule groups. And inside a rule group, you can have many one-to-many subgroups. And you can connect those subgroups with an AND condition or an OR condition. So this way you are very flexible to create any logic to check your fields. And this allows you to create very complex rules or group of rules, and it gives you the ability to almost define any logic that you need. Okay, this was the first part. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you have a look also at the other parts.